All
Good morning, everyone. It looks like we're having folks trickle in. Good morning. Hope your week is going well. My name is Christina Shortino. I'm the Resource Programs Manager here with Site, joined by Crystal Ibarra, Resource Programs Specialist with Site. We're happy to have you all today, and I'm excited to co-host our webinar with our discount program partners with Managed Methods. For housekeeping, please know that this webinar will be recorded and will be available on the site website within about a week. So please do check back if you want to ping myself or Crystal directly to see if it's up. Before then, feel free to reach out. We'll drop our email addresses in the chat. Without further ado, would love to kick it over to David Waugh, Chief Revenue Officer with Managed Methods.
Hello, everyone, and greetings. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you very much, Christina and Crystal. Hey, Crystal, just as a reminder, can you make my colleague Charles also a co-host? Um, love the background, Christina. The a little representation there, the Golden Gate State. My background's blurred, but I would give you a background right now of a cloudy, overcast Colorado. We are in. I'm located today in just outside of Boulder, Colorado, little sleepy town of Golden, Colorado. Charles, my colleague, I'll introduce here momentarily. He's up in the Pacific Northwest. And unfortunately, our colleague that's with us normally from California is unable to join us today. So, we'll have a little representation across the board here. But hello, everyone, and the site community and California IT and education. We appreciate you guys taking the opportunity to join us today. Many of you know who we are and where we're from. And probably familiar with the brand, but there is going to be some of you, of course, it's brand new. So we welcome all of you to ask questions throughout, raise your hands, a couple, all the good stuff. So a couple housekeeping items as Christine and Crystal have shared. I think all attendees are muted. This is being recorded. I believe there's going to be a copy of it later. I'll make sure the slide deck gets in the hands of Christina and Crystal and the site team, so that everybody can get a copy of it or access. But then towards the end of the presentation here, we'll also give you some insights on that. So Charles, if you want to go ahead and jump ahead. You can go ahead and skip this slide. This is more or less our agenda. So this is kind of a combination of the taglines today. You saw the opening slide there, talking about the critical audits and that we give you real control of your Google Workspace. And I think on the invite that went out to site, this is the tagline we use because this is what we've been using a lot here lately. And this is kind of a throwback. So this is going to be a test for some of you that maybe are of the same age or older than me. And I give this credit to the advertisers of a chemical company called BASF. So those of you that are old enough to remember, you might remember the commercials in the late, back it was in the 1990s. They had we don't make the toy, and they show a little kid playing with a toy. We make it, the plastic stronger. And then they show like a fancy, I think it was a Corvette, some sports car driving down the road. We don't make the car, we make the paint shinier. And they had all these different types of consumer products that they showed off. And it was basically saying, look, hey, we don't make these great things you use every day. We are a part of it, though, to help you make life better. And that's our belief with our partnership with Google Workspace for Education is, we don't make Google Workspace. Google makes that, and they do a really darn good job at it and make a great product that many of you out there are using. We here at Managed Methods, we make it more secure. We make it easier to secure it. We provide you greater visibility and control. And we're proud to be partners with Google, not only Google Cloud, but Google Workspace for Education, and proud to be working with over 700 school districts across the United States and Canada, as well as 45 or so plus districts and private schools and charter schools there in California. So that's kind of our theme today is let's dive into Google, and we're here to talk about how we can give you greater visibility and control from the mailbox, the Gmail, all the way out to the browser and everything in between, and regardless of what level of Google you're on. So let's go ahead and jump forward, Charles. Just a couple quick plugs here on Managed Methods. If you're not familiar with who we are, Managed Methods, our mission is to help make the online learning environment more secure for education. We provide tools that give tech departments, big and small, one person shops to full teams, greater visibility and control, as I said, from that entire experience across staff and students inside of your Google Workspace, your Microsoft 365, whether it's, happening inside of a Gmail, it's a phishing email, it's malware attachments. You want to, stop that stuff and look for it and be alerted, whether it's data loss prevention because of student data privacy information, whether it's third-party apps. We're on a mission to help secure that environment and give you a safer and more visible experience with that. Charles, let's go ahead and jump forward. Just a little bit about us as an organization. Company been around now for over a decade. We've had our product in the market going into its 10th year. I think we're pushing 50 employees. I should know the exact number. I apologize. I'm one of the founding team members. Charles, you've been with me here, since 2019, long time. We are spread out around the country, but we're headquartered just outside of Denver at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains in Boulder, Colorado. As you know, we're big partners here with Site, have been for a long time, going back to the SETPA days. Those of you may remember that. Also partners on a national level with the Consortium of School Networking, COSN, as well as the National Student Data Privacy Consortium, and of course, the two big platforms we support, Google and Microsoft. Proud to be partners with them. Just a little plug as a side note, don't know if any of you are going to be in Chicago in 2 weeks for the annual COSN conference, but if you are, please come by and say hello to me and look me up. I'll be there with another one of my colleagues. So if you're going to be heading out to COSN, drop that in the chat or, come by and say hi to us. Go ahead, Charles, we can jump forward. So let's kind of set the stage as to maybe why everybody's here, what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to be kind of diving into these things. And throughout, feel free to share maybe examples or stories or situations in the chat. But, recently there's been some publications put out there. We're constantly staying abreast of things. We do surveys on our own, but we work, with our partners and look at different things. But in a most recent survey that's been published by a large ed tech company that does security and sign-on controls, their most recent report published that 52% of U.S. districts experienced a cyber incident in 2025. 52%, over half. That's a 36% increase from 2024. And this data was also confirmed by the SLED division of Microsoft as well in their annual report. And when you look at that, I'm willing to bet that somebody here in the audience, you probably fall into that 52%, that one of you in this audience, your district, experienced a cyber security incident in 2025. Again, a massive jump from 2024. Of that, there was a 28% increase from 2024 to 2025 of third-party incidents, which highlights the reality that, again, it's whack-a-mole. You've got not only the requirement that you need to lock things down within your environment, but then you have to have this ability to understand, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, who's got their fingers, in the cookie jar there into your environment so that you can be aware of what's happening there. You can see the other stats here, of course. Student identity theft is now the number one concern over half of school districts in the United States. But yet in that same survey, they found out that, less than 21% of districts are deploying any kind of data loss prevention measures, or they are simply, assuming that it's being handled by the providers in which the data is being stored in, and that includes Google and Microsoft. And again, we all know what that means when you say assume. And of course, this last bullet point, I think everybody is well aware of. This has been a front and center topic, and that is AI is amplifying the risk faster than schools can respond. So, big topic out there right now, AI. I've been at 7 conferences already since the start of the year. We're only 3 months in, and AI has been front and center, and AI guardrails and all of that's a big topic. Charles, all right, go ahead and jump forward here. Go ahead and skip that. We've already kind of covered our mission statement. Just final kind of plug here on who we are before we just get into general topics. Again, ManagedMethods, many of you may be familiar with us, but we offer our flagship product, Cloud Monitor, which is what's going to be a lot of the emphasis of today. But we're going to touch on our filter and classroom products as well. Some of you may be like, whoa, I didn't know ManagedMethods had a filter in classroom. Yes, those are our 2 newest offerings. We entered our filter product into the market a couple of years ago. And then we added our Classroom Manager sibling product into the market last year. And really that's, because, well, our technology from Cloud Monitor has been so well regarded. A lot of our customers just asked us to simply extend that technology. And we're evolving to bring our cybersecurity technology across the board so that we truly can be the only vendor in the space that's purpose-built for ed tech that can take you from that mailbox to the browser and everything in between. So a lot of great filter vendors out there in the market today, but that's all they focus on. All they're doing is student safety, focus on the filter in the classroom. We are bringing the cybersecurity element into that picture. All right, let's go ahead, Charles, and jump into the meat and potato. Why do schools partner with us? You're going to kind of see some of that as we go throughout. You'll get a copy of these slides so you can kind of read through those bullet points. Charles going to skip ahead. More about school districts that partner with us, just some of the, some great, positive quotes that some of our customers have put out there through published case studies. And some of you have even heard these people present with us alongside at the site annual conference in the past few years, and as well as in our webinars that we've had before. Go ahead, Charles, we'll jump forward. So let's get into the topic of today. And why is it important to conduct audits of your environment, investigations and audits within the Google Workspace environment specifically? And what we're going to talk about today also is applicable to the Microsoft world, but the main focus today was on the Google Workspace environment. And how is it that we, help, like I said, we don't make Google Workspace for education, we help make it more secure. So why is it important? Skip ahead, Charles, let's move forward. Well, number one, this slide is very impactful. You don't want to end up in the headlines. You don't want to end up in the media. You don't want to be one of that 52% that's experienced a cybersecurity incident, in the past year or this coming year here in 2026. You don't want to be a part of that rising statistic. Unfortunately, so many people now have taken a stance that, the belief is it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. And I think some of that too is being promoted, by cyber insurance companies and other types of cybersecurity organizations out there. Yes, it's a high likelihood that you are potentially going to be a victim of an attack or suffer from a cybersecurity incident, but let's hope we don't. So that's why we continually have these conversations. We talk about these kinds of things so you don't end up in the headlines. Charles, let's jump forward here. So this is going to finally set the stage here, or the final piece to set the stage as we jump into this. This is obviously not an end-all be-all of a cybersecurity stack, or of your technology stack within a district, but it's, a good representation to give you kind of the basic levels from infrastructure to network to endpoint to identity in the cloud. We're specifically going to get into today talking about the cloud layer. Why? Because, well, the statistics show that this is still the least addressed area when it comes to, locking down the environment, in your areas. Obviously, as you move down, zero trust, MFA, single sign-on, very important, endpoints and locking those things down. Infrastructure and network, though, still tend to be where most money is spent when it comes to E-rate dollars and budgets, but yet the vast majority of the new modern wave of cyber attacks are happening at the top three layers and especially at the cloud layer. And much of the investments spent through E-rate and other school budget investments at an infrastructure and network layer don't do a single thing to help you at the cloud layer. So that's why we continually talk about the need for the multi-layered approach. And today we're going to be addressing the cloud layer. All right, Charles, let's go ahead and start getting into these. So when we talk about a security and a safety audit and how we make Google Workspace safer, more visible, more secure, is conducting investigations and audits on a periodic basis of the content and the user experience inside the box. Too many people, when I ask them about an audit, cybersecurity audit of that nature, they talk more about those legacy perimeter aspects, pen testing. Okay, well, how many people are conducting their pen testing on their Google Workspace or the Microsoft 365? Very, very few. They're still looking at the traditional perimeter of, hey, we're trying to see if somebody can break into our network. Well, okay, that's important, certainly. Not saying that that's not, but you got to go further than that because more and more stuff is being stored at the cloud layer. And if you're not conducting pen testing or audits to see who has access to these things of the data that sits in your cloud layers, in this particular conversation, Google Workspace or 365, then you're going to be missing a large chunk of that. So you can see some of the bullet points here and what it is that we're talking about and what we're going to get into. All right, Charles, let's jump ahead. So let's you can skip this. Let's go ahead and get into, this is not an end all be all exhaustive list. We chose, these 8 to discuss. Some of these are extremely vital. And we're going to start with this one. These are not in any particular order of importance, but the reason we put third-party apps first, simply because when we looked at one of those earlier bullet points, a vast majority of the 52% that have suffered a cybersecurity incident in the last year, you saw the large increase that impacted third parties. And third parties have access into your environment in a lot of different ways and shapes and forms. Let's zoom this in specifically to look at third parties that have applications touching your Google Workspace environment or your Microsoft 365. So in this case, we're talking about extensions, OAuth tokens, when you use sign in with Google or sign in with Microsoft. So yes, we want to promote people to do the SSO and that type of nature, but this is where we want to make sure that first and foremost, the only apps that have a connection to our workspace environment are those that are needed for day-to-day business functions of the district or in the instruction and teaching process. So what we're talking about is conducting a periodic investigation on a regular basis of what apps are connected to your environment, what permissions and scopes are these applications that are required for day-to-day business operations or education of the organization, and is there inappropriate content or risk associated with it? So we're talking about things like, do we need fantasy football? Well, the NCAA March Madness. How, nothing wrong with that. Fine, go out and do that. Charles and I are in an NCAA pool, but we don't have it connected to our school district account. So Charles, let's go ahead and give him an example of what we're talking about by an audit within the third party. And while he's switching screens, note on the slide deck, we're giving you links to how you can access this information in Google and Microsoft's knowledge base. Of course, we're going to show you how we can help make this easier for you. Charles, I think you're muted too, boss.
There we go. Now you can hear me. All right. So this is going to be the apps tab here of Cloud Monitor. So we look at applications in a number of ways. From a security perspective, our core focus is in on the permissions that the people are granted to these applications. So here within the console, we've got this option to take a look at the various scope categories. These are the overall API permissions that might be granted. Some of those permissions might be pretty basic, and they may not pose a big risk from that aspect, but they're still good to be aware of what's out there. When we're concerned more with really what they're getting into and if they have kind of additional feature functionality or things like that, this is where we might want to take a look and say, okay, well, if something has the ability to view and manage the files in your Google Drive, that's probably something I want to be aware of, and I want to see what applications have those kinds of permissions. So then we have capabilities in here to very quickly and easily search for those sorts of permissions. So again, we can come back to that Drive side of things there. We can search for that. We already knew that application was in here. But the other important thing we can see as well too is, hey, there's people that are actively using this application. We have 6 people on this app. If this is not something that we've vetted and ensured that has those good permissions, this might be something that we actually want to remove from the system here. So we have an option to come in here and actually break that OAuth token connection on a one-off basis, and then we can set policy that will break those connections on a 4-hour basis. So every 4 hours when someone is signed into it, it would sign them back out. Typically speaking, with something like this, though, talking with your users and figuring out, okay, why was this in here? Is a good first step. A lot of times too, some of these applications, extensions, and things that people have signed into and authorized these OAuth tokens with are things that they forgot they were even using. We see a lot of that happen, especially with the staff side of things, where, okay, hey, these 2 teachers signed up for this, but maybe they were at a conference or something and they forgot they ever even did it. So revoking that will break that connection there, severs the link, and it's a great way to go ahead and lock down the environment further. In a real environment, we would see significantly more applications than just this one in here, but that's a good example. The other thing we can also do is we can create automated policies that can then look for these kinds of permissions moving forward if something new comes into the environment. So, hey, there's something new in here. It has these kinds of permissions we might be concerned about. Let's go ahead and provide alert notifications about that, and approach it from that way. As David mentioned, one of the other things that we can look at is more of that acceptable use side of things. So you'll see some of these applications have different categories that we might be looking at. So for example, someone's CBS Sports social sign-in probably isn't something we would need in the district. Does this pose probably a major security risk? No, it doesn't really have a lot of permissions, but from an acceptable use perspective, we don't want to have people signing up for these sorts of services and tools with their district issued account in the first place. So that's the other approach of helping lock things down. Primarily, we see this more of an issue on the staff side, but certainly on the student side, there can be issues as well too that we see certain applications that might slip through or be authorized from odd spots there, or hey, if your permissions aren't exactly configured how you want it on the student side, that can be something where we might see some of these sorts of applications pop up in here as well too. But the idea here is to try to provide that visibility of what's out there, what permissions they have, and then and also very importantly, who's using those applications. So as you saw there, quick glance, it's really easy to get that information and then make those determinations of, is this something we want in the environment, or is this something that needs to be removed out of the environment here? And then, as mentioned, we do have abilities to come in and set those actual policies up and say, okay, we want to have the platform come in and actually impact what's going on in the environment here, or provide notifications about new potential threats coming in moving forward. And this is an example policy here with this abnormal permissions dash email, where it's looking at those various permissions that are a lot of access into email. But we could do something similar with Drive or with calendar, with any sort of other area that we say, hey, we want to keep a closer eye on these types of permissions when an application's coming in. And then from there, it can provide those notifications. It does have a capability to revoke. Again, that revoke is going to be every 4 hours, but it does help keep things locked down. Obviously, one of the things too is if an account was to get compromised and maybe a bad actor then is using that account to single sign into things, this would be something where you could then set it up where it's going to break those connections. And then, hey, if the account then gets suspended or you do a password reset, at least you don't have those lingering applications in there as well too. So that's the idea there on the application side, to help further lock down the environment there and restrict things. So you just aren't seeing anything and everything being signed into with district issued account there.
Well, thanks, Charles. And you, I say, probably could stay over there as we'll pop down to investigation number 2. So again, not in any particular order, but when you look at your environment, and we look back to one of the more major data breach activities that occurred within the last 2 years that continues had some copycats, was that of the Singularity MD attacks. It impacted Long Beach Unified. It impacted Clark County, Las Vegas. It impacted my home district here, Jeffco, Colorado. And that was a Google Groups through a student compromised account situation that led to a much broader reach. And we're going to get into some of these other examples of that. But that started with suspicious login activity. And too many times when we go in and do audits and security checks with school districts, we see that they overlook the student accounts. There's too much emphasis from a cybersecurity tool perspective. Oh, we only do that on staff, or we're only checking this on staff. And most of the emphasis on the student side is really just purely what is required by law and that of the SIPA filtering aspect. We're advocates for either you lock down your student environments and put them in a walled garden, but you still got to keep an eye on suspicious login activity across all staff and student accounts. So can we identify who's logging in from where? Can we see a pattern of behavior? So Charles is going to give you an example now of how we can help with that. And again, as a reminder, while he's switching screens, all of these audits investigations, you're going to have access to the slide deck that gives you the links to how you can do these things with the free and native tools from the respective vendors of Google and Microsoft, whether you have some of the paid licenses, whether you have a platform managed methods in place. We want to make sure you know how to do these things. Charles, I think you're muted again there. So.
Absolutely. So this is a tool we have called the Login Analyzer. This is one of the core tools that districts use to go through and take a look at that login information. To start with, we can apply various filters to narrow down things. The platform here by default is going to be looking for any successful login events from outside the US or any suspicious successful login events from outside the US. So when we go ahead and look for those sorts of events, the platform is going to provide some very clean information in here. We can see time and date stamp. We can see the user in question. We can see the IP address. We can see the location. And then also very importantly too, we can see who the ISP is. A lot of times this ISP information is very valuable because typically speaking, when someone's actually traveling, the ISP is going to be a local ISP in country. A lot of times when we're going to see compromised accounts, it's going to be some sort of data center or VPN or something like that that's being used. Typically speaking, a data center is going to be the main thing that we'll see. Of course, there are exceptions to that rule where we do see events where it's just a direct login from a country outside the U.S. there, but that's something that we can always make modifications to. And the geofence is very flexible too. We have districts where they decide, hey, we've got users that commonly travel to certain locations, and we need to make sure that those aren't going to be impacted by this. But the idea here is to try to provide clear information of hey, these are events where someone's actually accessing their account from outside the U.S., from outside what you'd expect to see them accessing it there. And of course, that's something we look on the student side. It's something we look on the staff side as well too. And then coupled with that as well too, the other type of events that we like to look at are those suspicious unapproved ones. So this is where Google has flagged the event as being suspicious, but they still let them into the account. This is something that commonly causes issues where we commonly see some of those compromises appear in here as well too. And then we can set policies on this. Those policies are going to be functional every 4 hours, and then they can go ahead and suspend an account or reset a password automatically. And that's a great option as well too if there is a potential concern, especially on the staff side, where we might say, hey, let's go ahead and implement something like that, and potentially even on the student side as well, where hey, we don't want to have students accessing their accounts with these potential VPNs or other areas of concern there. Also, very easy to click into here and get some additional information. How they get into their account in the first place. How did this happen here to start with? Something that's a newer feature that we've also introduced as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to have any examples in here today. I don't think I will, but we've introduced a new database to look for known VPN IPs. So this is something that a lot of our customers have been using now moving forward. Unfortunately, something that we've seen as an uptick on this suspicious login activity and compromised accounts are data centers within the United States being used. And that's a way to go ahead and get around a lot of the conditional access and things that you might have deployed in Google there. Again, if it thinks it's within the US, it might let them access certain services and things. And we've certainly seen a big uptick in that. Bad actors are always going to get wiser to ways to defeat what they're doing. So this is something that we're doing to also try to help out. And I've seen certainly a lot of the compromised accounts that have been within the US have been either known VPNs or things of that nature there that we're seeing in this database more. So that's something where, again, then we can take that information and we can go into the policy side of things to provide those alert notifications, to provide that information and say, hey, this is something that we need to be looking at a little bit further here. So we've got some great default policies that can be set to, say, suspend users or reset passwords. We can even go after IP addresses. This is something we don't do as commonly, but if there are certain IP addresses we're seeing on a consistent basis that are popping up, or IP ranges, something we can target as well too with policies. And then we can also look at things like a broader login policy, looking for total number of logins within a set time frame. And then there's also one to look for distinct ones. This is more looking for the hopping around of different locations. And this is one that I think has provided our customers some good value there of trying to look for that jumping around. So the idea here is, okay, there's policies now to let you know that certain things are happening. And then from there, actions can be taken, or at the minimum, at least you're aware of what's happening with the environment there. And that's the idea.
Thank you, Charles. So as we continue to move along this audit journey, and again, keep in mind, you're going to get copies of this. We're going to be going through stuff pretty fast here. But once you go from suspicious logins, then, the next, kind of line here that we saw things move along in the progression when the Singularity MD attacks occurred and a lot of types of data breach occurs. Once somebody's in the door, they want to go see what's happening in different environments and where's all the storage. So in the Google Workspace environment, you're talking the mailboxes and the drive. And so an area that we see constantly that's a major source overlooked, and there's a lot of data loss, data theft, happens at your drive level. By nature, as things are stored inside of Google Drive and shared drives, Google does a phenomenal job. Google's technology, the stuff while it's in their possession, it's like when you say it's in the vault. It's when it's in the vault down at the bank in the safety deposit box, it's pretty darn safe. Same thing if it's in Microsoft OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, etc. It's about A, human interaction with it and the way things are filed or accessed or shared, and B, then what's being stored in there. So in the event that somebody does get somebody else's credentials, like we talked about with the previous audit, suspicious login or some other way, shape, or form, what's being stored in there, how it's being stored, etc. So similar to like when we talked about third-party apps, number one, do a comprehensive audit on a periodic basis to make sure that people aren't either intentionally or inadvertently or accidentally storing information that has no business being there. What time of year is it right now when it comes to the federal government and our paychecks? Tax season. Yes, coming up very soon. All too many times we see employees within school districts that are using the school issued credentials, in this conversation, Google Drive or shared drives, could be Microsoft, SharePoint, Note, Teams, etc., that they are storing their personal financial information, tax returns, etc., inside of Google Drive. That's just one of many examples of inappropriate usage of school districts issued technology. Get that out of there. Keep it on your own personal stuff. But also, are we looking for information that is inappropriate content, maybe pornographic material, movies, music files, things that just have no business being there because A, they're taking up storage, B, they create liability and risk for you, and then also just it's not supposed to be part of the education environment. Then, of course, you have to be understanding of personally identifiable information, financial information, which is fine to be stored there. It's appropriate. It's a part of the school business and teaching process. But then how is it being stored and accessed? And that's a very, very crucial touch point because when they unpacked and went through, for example, the Singularity MD attacks, and in many cases when we're inside doing audits and risk assessments for districts, we see that it's just flimsy file sharing behavior. People get lazy or they get in a hurry. So they just simply will cut and paste a file and share it. And therefore, it's out there with a global link share and anyone who has access to that. And therefore, you as a district technology leader have no recourse on how to handle those types of things. So just understanding what's being stored. Is it supposed to be there? School business or not? How is it being accessed and shared? And who's got that access? So Charles, let's walk through this. I know I'm telling you to go through it real fast when we can spend an entire day on this part.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me go ahead and hop into the Drive file side of things here. As David mentioned, one of the biggest issues we see with Drive file and sharing of files is that link share. I'm hovering over this globe icon here to indicate one of those files. So this file is being shared where anyone with a link would have edit access to this file. Doesn't matter if they have a Google account or not. If they have the link to it, they would have edit access. And that's the thing you want to keep a close eye on, are these kinds of shares of this nature there. There's really easy ways we can provide filtering in here. And then more importantly, we can set policies that can continuously look for this kind of behavior. We can target this based on specific OUs that might be sharing that, or we can be more specific and target it on certain identifiers that might be in the file, social security numbers, credit card numbers, FERPA, IEP information, things of that nature. So there's options of what we want to target and what we want to go after in the first place. But sharing to the outside there, with the anyone with the link share permission type is one of the things that we see a lot of issues with. This is an example of an IEP in this case, but this is not an uncommon thing I've seen in a lot of districts I've worked with over the years. Again, it's just where, hey, we're trying to share something quickly, we're trying to give people access to things, and then we've shared it in such a way now where, hey, if I click into this, anyone with the link has edit access to it. A lot of times is anyone with the link has view access, but again, something where it doesn't really make sense that it should be in here in the first place. With that, of course, then we can come in here and we can break that file share, or we can go in and actually set a policy that we would be able to, moving forward, continuously break that. But very easy to also come in here and say, yeah, that's not being shared right. I want to go ahead and break that share permission there. And we can do this in mass as well. We can do this on up to 500 files here at a time too. Go through and break those sorts of link shares and things that people shouldn't be doing in the first place. And then, of course, as David mentioned, we can also look at different file types as well too. This is a common thing we see more on the student side where, hey, are students storing GIFs? Are they storing HTML files? Are they using Google Sites to create game sites and things like that? Are they going in and storing a bunch of executables or zips or things like that you don't want? And then again, we can come in and set policy that can continuously take action and remove those from the environment as needed. So, and that's the idea there, is to try to go ahead and prevent those sorts of things from happening moving forward, going in and addressing those issues or incidents there.
And Charles, go ahead and let's go ahead and stay here. You don't need to switch back. We'll explain what 4 is just verbally here. Like all things auditing here, the next topic that would be on the slide, and when we switch back, you'll kind of see it and you'll get copies of this. But when you're doing any kind of investigation and audits into the content and user behavior inside of your Google Workspace, your Microsoft, and these areas, we have a capability, of course, to see a lot of things. And we refer to this as the safety signals. So keep in mind that when you go looking for these, whether you're using a platform like ManagedMethods Cloud Monitor, or whether you're using web filtering products from either ManagedMethods or other vendors out there, whether you're doing these just through the manual ways that we'll have links to, you're going to see stuff that maybe you weren't either prepared for, or you're just going to run into it, whether that's pornography, explicit content, bullying, threats to oneself, threats to others, self-harm, suicide, concerning behaviors. Keep in mind that when you go down this road, you're opening Pandora's box. And one of our core missions, as professionals in this industry, is first and foremost protect the kiddos. Our mission is protect all staff, students, protect the districts, protect the data. But keep in mind when you start to go down this route, and so when Charles is already in here, and he can also show it at other layers here, you're going to find information in some of these cases that falls into what we call the safety signals. And it can be, we say safety signals because it's not just students, because we're monitoring staff and personnel as well in this. And so that becomes more of an HR issue sometimes. And trust me, we've seen it across the board with both staff and students. Charles?
Absolutely. So this is our interface here. And so anything that the platform has identified in drive files, in Gmail, shared drive files that might be cause for concern from that safety, student safety signals here, we locate here in this central dashboard called the risks tab. When I click on, in this case, I clicked on self-harm ML. This is one of our machine learning models. We have 3 of those different machine learning models that are looking for things. This one here, trying to look for indications of self-harm. We have one looking for potential threats and violence, and then one looking for adult or violent image files there. When I click into something here, it's going to go ahead and bring up some basic information. So in this case, this is a file. It's owned by this particular student here. It's not shared to anybody in the domain here, or anybody at all. And in this case, it's being held just by the student. It was picked up here on today. And then with any of our models, it's going to give a summary of why the platform flagged it in the first place. This one's pretty clear as to why it flagged it. Again, this kind of information that we see in here would be unfortunately unsurprising to see. We see a lot of this kind of stuff, especially these unshared files are probably one of the areas that's the biggest concern, because no one else is aware that this exists in the environment then. Unless you were going through and you specifically needed to look at this the student's drive files, we wouldn't have any way of knowing this. This hasn't been shared to a friend or a parent or even a staff member here. So this is the kind of stuff that's the scarier sort of thing that we do run across. We see a lot of student journals and things like that will pop up in here. The idea here is to let you know that, hey, there is something going on. There's an issue. There's a potential problem that someone needs to address here. And there's ways we can have this information routed to specific people, narrowed the focus down to look at specific people as well. Some actions we can quickly take on here as well too, including just pulling it down. There's ways to come in here and take notes on risks if we need to for further follow-up and things. But that's the idea here with these machine learning models, is they're going to go out and look for these sorts of things. We also do support a number of phrase-based models as well too, so we can look for certainly things beyond that as well too. For example, if we're concerned about maybe proxies or VPNs or other sorts of things, there's a lot of flexibility to look for potential things that might be cause for concern on the student side or on the staff side as well too. But especially on the student side, toxicity, ML risk scan there, and the self-harm ML risk scan there are going to be the primary ones that they get used to help identify that information and provide those notifications that there's something that's worth looking into there.
And Charles, go ahead and stay in here, because this segues then to our, the next 2 areas of risk, talking about risky emails and then risky online activities. So risky emails, okay, email becomes everybody's nightmare. You just made the hair on the back of my neck. Well, sorry, I don't have hair. That's a bad example. So you got the email now nightmare coming into play. So as we stay in the topic of risk, let's talk about how we and everyone here should be thinking about that. So I'm sure everyone in here, you've got phishing awareness type of trainings you do, whether you're doing that through a third party, you're doing it manually on your own. You probably have some sort of malware and anti-phishing or phishing detection tools in place, ways you can do that on your own. And of course, it's near and dear to our hearts as well. So Charles, let's talk about risky emails, and then we'll move into risky online behavior.
Sure, absolutely. Of course, one of those factors can be just information that contains things like socials and credit card numbers that might be being emailed around or being emailed in from the outside. That's what we tend to see with a lot of tax information, where a staff member will use their personal email and then email it into the domain here. I think in our examples here on PII, it's primarily files in this case, but kind of similar idea applies here, where, hey, people are sending or sharing this into the domain. Something that I don't have in my list of risk scans here is we have a newer risk scan that's in beta called our spam phishing risk scan. That's going to be looking for potential phishing emails that are coming in on the staff side to your internal users there. So that's a new one we'll be looking at. It's a risk scan, just like these ones here. It has a very similar interface. We can set policies up for it to look for stuff in the environment today. Just right now. That's not part of the beta. We do have a phishing risk scan that looks for URL-based threats. We use Google Web Risk API and PhishTank to look for those, and that's something that would be very clearly identified here in the Gmail tab, and that's something that the platform has capabilities to look out for as well. And then this tool here that I'm showing, the live email search, this is the tool if you are looking to go out and remove emails en masse or take actions on those emails or tracking down specific emails. This tool works very well to do that. It's a live API call throughout the whole domain. Simply put in whatever information you know about the email that's relevant. Certainly don't have to limit yourself to a 24-hour period, but there's lots of additional parameters that can be added in here. Of course, we can do more broad searches where we might be looking at the inbox, the spam, and the trash as well too. We might be looking at a specific person's mailbox. When we find that information here, then we can go in and actually take action on that to go ahead and delete those emails as well too in mass there. So that's always an option as well too when we're dealing with actions or problems that might be occurring on the email side here. So I'll just throw a quick example in here, just so you can see kind of the what we can do here on the email side. The searches are added to a queue here when we do that, and then from here I'm able to come in and look at the emails of the specific user. In this case, this user hasn't received a ton of emails today, but I do have options to come in here and delete emails from multiple spots here. If this was a search that I was running across my entire domain and I was seeing multiple hits on here, this is something where I could do a delete emails from all users and do a mass deletion across the board there. Also valuable information like quickly pulling the headers, downloading the emails and EML, those sorts of things can be done very quickly here. There's also ways we can do mass quarantines as well, which is a trash functionality. So we can mass trash emails if we need to as well. But this is a way where we can respond to incidents or problems that have happened. So hey, someone said I got a weird email. I want to investigate that further, see who else has had that. This tool is great for that and helping out with that email security side of things there. This is more of a responsive thing. Of course, then the policies and some of those risk scans can be more of a as soon as the things are occurring there.
So let's move this conversation as we talk. Let's move now out to the edge a little bit further. So we're looking at auditing and investigating the content and the user behavior as it sits throughout the environment. But of course, Google seamlessly touches to the browser because that's the full impact of Google Workspace. It's 100% cloud-based. So not only are we dealing with risky content that could be coming in through an email or a third-party app or uploaded into Drive and shared and whatnot, but also how is it accessible? And that's going to be through browser behavior. So looking at risky online behavior, again, part of our world, we can extend this out to the browser edge. So our students visiting sites that not only should be, investigated further, but as we now are dealing with this increasing landscape of AI and AI tools, what is actually happening there? So like even today, I was listening to, a news story and looking at, or listening to a podcast, and one of the conversation points was that of how every seamlessly approved ed tech tool that a district is working with is introducing some form of AI creator or AI access in it. And one of the examples was an educational tool used for creating quizzes that now is providing an AI creator within it. And kids are able to bypass filters because, well, the filter says, hey, this AI tool was on the approved list, but yet they're powering it through some of the other large language models we see out there. And so the kiddos could get the AI creator within this approved quiz tool as one example to do something for them that was inappropriate. So Charles, let's talk about risky online activity and how we're now crossing into a new frontier, of course, with the AI front too.
Absolutely. Let me just sign in here quickly.
Great example of using single sign-on.
Single sign-on, yes. Excellent. So this is our filtering product, which is looking at the web traffic. And one of the core areas where we can see some of those kinds of areas of concern is going to be out here on the in the violation section. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn that off here. So we have a specific tab here dedicated called AI. So this is a specific thing that is looking for inputs into ChatGPT, into Gemini, into Claude. Trying to remember if I'm missing any. I know one of the ones we've also just introduced that's now live as well is this is also looking for inputs into Magic School AI as well too. So the idea there is to try to grab some of those sorts of, change my time frame here just slightly, some of those sorts of different kinds of inputs that people might be typing in here. I'll actually just flip environments. That will be just a tad bit faster there. But that's the idea here is we're trying to look for those sorts of inputs into those sorts of services that people might be using here in the first place. So that's something that can be helpful to identify those kinds of activities, those kinds of behaviors. Of course, we can't just look at general inputs and searches and things like that, but this is something that theoretically we could see someone ask ChatGPT or ask one of those various services that exist out there that are those large language models. So with that, we can identify quickly what was the input. We can see, of course, the user that submitted that input, and we could go in and take a look at their larger browsing activity and what they were getting into beyond that as well too. But that's the idea here of looking for these sorts of inputs and things into ChatGPT or other sorts of services as well. And the platform too will flag these in this case for different kinds of risks and things like that. So we can come in and quickly and say, hey, yeah, this has been flagged by our toxicity model in this case, or our self-harm model, or some other model or thing that we're looking for on that end with the AI stuff. And of course, we're going to be looking into just more standard searches as well too, or just larger inputs across the board. Some of these inputs may capture stuff where it's not a specific AI tool that we're uniquely identifying, like Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or things like that, but it might be inputs into maybe some sort of chatbot or something that the students have found that isn't yet blocked or something like that they're using to have conversations with. Because there's so many of those AI chatbots out there that are just wrappers for the various AI models that exist out there. And of course, they're adjusted to look for kind of different things. But another thing that certainly this input detection that we do have in the content filter can be very useful for helping identify as well too, if those sorts of things are going. But the AI side of things has been very valuable for the districts that have used it. You'll notice that there's this toggle for violations or no violations. Violations would be things where, hey, yeah, we have a risk scan, we have something that's looking for it that might violate it, versus something where, hey, we're just looking for more general traffic. Certainly, when we've turned that off in some districts with the violations only there, we've seen students just ask, of course, Gemini or ChatGPT to write their whole essay. It says, "Hey, write this essay for me," or tweak that a little bit and make it sound more human, or whatever the case may be. Again, this is something that we are seeing more and more of course, unfortunately. So.
And Charles, while we're at it, these last two are fairly quick and right in the same topic as we begin to wrap up. The final two audits in this case are tied in line with this, and that is locating devices and talking about VPN and IP access. And that's something I know you touched on the VPN side. So let's just show how we can take it from a different angle here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the information that we see on Cloud Monitor is great for giving us good information on things from the Google login events standpoint. The devices side here and the account side of things here can be very valuable from looking at things on those individual devices. So these are some examples of some different Chromebooks in here. You'll see they're going to have the MAC address. These devices aren't enrolled in Google's device management, but if we did see that, we'd see an asset ID here below as well. Get some quick information on what version of Chrome they're on, when they last logged in, what's their last known location. Of course, sometimes we might see a situation where we've got more than one person logging in. We can click that and go into that specific account. And we're going to get some good information here of what the internal IP address was, as well as what external IP is showing here. In this case, too, then we've got some options to, if the device has been reported as lost or stolen, lock the Chrome browser down, which works really well in Chromebooks there. And we can also start tracking the device, which will track the device there for a 24-hour period. It'll pull that up then on a map, try to give a general location of where that device might be located in this case. But that's the idea here with the location information that we can provide here and some of that device information as well too. Of course, we can always go back a little bit further with this as well too, and see kind of more of those events as a whole here. So we can see, of course, and there's more events in here, and we can see in this case the back and forth with this particular device. But a shared device like this, that might be common to see, but it does give a good idea of kind of what's going on. Of course, we might see some things in here that might raise some questions. Why was this user logging in at 4 a.m. here? Why are they on their Chromebook? What are they getting into there? So, but this is the kind of information that can be valuable when we're trying to further kind of confirm what's going on. And then this is information that could be correlated and looked at with the account login information we're seeing on the Cloud Monitor side as well too. Okay, hey, we see that the user wasn't on any kind of Chromebook or device that was managed by the district, but we're seeing some VPN account login activity with the user. So we know either, hey, they're using a personal device, probably a phone, or maybe their account has been compromised. We're seeing other indicators of that as well. So that's the idea here with the device information that we can pull through in that location information as well.
All right, Charles, why don't you pop back over to the deck and we'll kind of summarize and wrap up and talk about a final few things here. So we're on slide 24. Yeah, down there we go. So here's the last, kind of a bonus item. Again, we're going to get a copy of this deck to everybody so that you can have the links, so you can go into all of these links on the right-hand side of each slide will take you to the various either Google knowledge base articles or Microsoft knowledge base articles where you can look at doing these things. Because the thing we want to emphasize is we want everybody to walk away to be thinking about, okay, are we doing these things? Do we have either tools in place or processes in place? Have we even looked at these things before? And make sure that you're addressing them in some way, shape, or form. Bonus automation. We do this as an automated type of thing. And if you want to even just take advantage of the free risk assessment, which is essentially a free audit, free trial, we activate the environment. It's 100% based in the cloud. You could activate it right now in the middle of the day. Your end users wouldn't even know what's going on. And then, we're not a high pressure sales organization. We want you to try it and experience it. And if at the end of the day you come away and say, hey, we think we're good, but we appreciate the insights in the audit, we guarantee you we're going to show you things that you had not seen before. It's just, we've been doing this now for almost a decade, and without failure, every time we go in, we're going to show you things that people don't know that's even there. And again, like I said, you've got certainly good tools at your disposal with both the free and paid versions of Google, whether you're on a 3 or 5 with Microsoft. We're an additional layer. And again, we don't make Google Workspace. We don't make Microsoft 365. We make it safer. We give you greater visibility and control. And as a part of our partnership with Site, if any of you were to happen to go through the trial and you say, hey, this is great, we'd like to have this as a part of our tool stack moving forward, we also have a great discount program partnership for members of Site. Next slide, Charles. So thank you. I'm just going to throw it out there. Questions? Anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts, something you want to share? Maybe something we've touched on that's been an experience that you've had with any of the above. But we highly encourage you to take advantage of the free trial. Charles, go one slide back up. That link that's there, you can go to the Site website. You can also go to ManagedMethods.com. But the Site website under discount programs, I think it's under resource discount programs, has access to how to get to the free trial and talks about the discount program. But also you can just visit ManagedMethods.com and learn all about it as well. So with that said, we're 8 minutes to the top of the hour. Any questions or comments? I don't know if there's anything out in the chat. Not sure. I see one chat, looks like. Or maybe that's people that had joined or left. Anyone? Any questions? Comments? All righty, Christina.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Thank you both. Thank you for the information. Again, please know that this webinar has been recorded and will be available on the Site webpage. David will be shooting us over the slide deck as well. So if you have any questions regarding the partnership or pricing, please do reach out to the Managed Methods team or Site crew. We're happy to help. Looking forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very much. David.
Ed, to your question, that's more of a district and a state question. It's if you've enabled the HIPAA security, that's certainly a setting, but IEP storage, when it's in Google Drive itself, in your district's Google Drive, absolutely. That's where, a place to be stored. It's how it's shared and who has access to it. Making sure that if it contains IEP data, it's not just shared with a global link share. It's explicitly shared. There may be even a timestamp on the sharing, and who the sharing's going to, and you have recourse for it. So that goes with anything IEP, HIPAA, all the rules of engagement, making sure who it's shared with, how it's shared, explicit shares to the right people, etc. Where there's more no-nos and where we see people getting in trouble is where it's a global link share or it's in a open shared drive that has, way too much access to it. And it may even boil down to your, in California, the rules, and I know every state's different, but even some districts take different rules. If you are sharing, you can't have it in a shared drive where people in other parts of the district have access to it. So if you're in, say, ABC Elementary, only staff members of ABC Elementary where that student is enrolled have access to that IEP. It can't be shared throughout the district. That may not be always the case in California. I know that's the case in some of the states we work in. So any other questions? That was a good one. No? Well, folks, we appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much. Christina, I'll get you a copy of the presentation. I don't know how that's distributed out. But of course, if anyone on the call is just itching to get access to this right away, feel free to email sales@managedmethods.com. Say I was on the site webinar. And Charles Mogan is amazing. The guy David, not so much. And otherwise, we appreciate it. Have a great start to April. Gosh, can you believe it? We're already in April. So have a good one, folks. Great day.
Thanks, David. Thanks, team.
Thank you.